Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and tonight's news is presented to you by American Friends of Magen David Adom, Israel's official medical first responders.
Whether they're treating the victims of rocket attacks or heart attacks, the paramedics of Magen David Adom, Israel's paramedic and Red Cross service, are saving lives even when it means risking their own. And in Israel's current conflict, your support is more important than ever. Help save a life and support Magen David Adom today. Go to afmda.org/Israel.
And coming up in today's newscast, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrives in Israel for the first leg of his Middle East tour. Meanwhile, we take a deeper look at a new study on the experience of American Jewry that, as of late, is more relevant than ever. And finally, an Israeli Instagrammer taking on the waves of online anti-Semitism with a brand new video spoof. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arriving in Israel Tuesday morning for the start of his Middle East tour, bent on solidifying the truce between Israel and Hamas and shoring up support for a two-state negotiation. Landing in Ben Gurion Airport, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken becoming the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit the region since President Biden began his term in January. And his docket is full. Blinken set to meet both with Israeli and Palestinian Authority officials, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gantz, and both Israeli and PA Presidents Rivlin and Abbas. The primary topic, buttressing the ceasefire with Hamas and setting the stage for future two-state negotiations in the wake of the 11-day-long conflict that ended last week.
President Biden asked me to come here today really for four reasons. First, to demonstrate the commitment of the United States to Israel's security, to start to work toward greater stability and reduce tensions in the West Bank and Jerusalem, to support urgent humanitarian and reconstruction assistance for Gaza, to benefit the Palestinian people, and to continue to rebuild our relationship with the Palestinian people and the Palestinian Authority. Intense behind-the-scenes diplomacy led by President Biden, working very closely with the Prime Minister, helped produce last week's ceasefire. Now we believe we must build on it. That starts with the recognition that losses on both sides were profound. Casualties are often reduced to numbers, but behind every number is an individual human being, a daughter, a son, a father, a mother, a grandparent, a best friend.
In line with Israeli efforts to sideline Hamas terrorists and prop up the Palestinian Authority, though, the United States will reportedly work to circumnavigate the Gaza-based Hamas. The White House earlier confirming about as much.
There's a recognition we need to continue to discuss and have conversations with our key partners in the region who played an instrumental role in getting to the point we reached last Thursday, and also to discuss the path forward on rebuilding Gaza. And as you noted, Mike, we know that won't be easy, in part because we want to prevent funding from going to Hamas. We obviously don't communicate directly with Hamas, given they're a terrorist organization. A number of countries in the region do. And so the Secretary's trip over the next couple of days will be focused on those objectives.
We know that to prevent a return to violence, we have to use the space created to address a larger set of underlying issues and challenges. And that begins with tackling the grave humanitarian situation in Gaza and starting to rebuild. We'll work with our partners, closely with all, to ensure that Hamas does not benefit from the reconstruction assistance.
While taking advice from Washington seriously, however, Israeli leadership holding strong to vows to respond harshly to Hamas's aggressions going forwards. Defense Minister Gantz already starting his plan to isolate Hamas as well by seizing 5 shipments on the way to Gaza containing large quantities of chemicals and hundreds of thousands of dollars in smuggled gold. Gantz explaining that while the products could be of both civilian and military use, Hamas will undoubtedly take control of the contraband. Likewise, acts preempting Iranian aggression also on the table. Prime Minister Netanyahu hinting at a unilateral action if need arises.
We discussed many regional issues, but none is greater than Iran. And I can tell you that I hope that the United States will not go back to the old JCPOA, because we believe that that deal paves the way for Iran to have an arsenal of nuclear weapons with international legitimacy. We also reiterated that whatever happens, Israel will always reserve the right to defend itself against a regime committed to our destruction, committed to getting the weapons of mass destruction for that end.
In related news, Belarusian officials reporting now that Hamas tried to export its terrorism to Europe just after Hamas's recent conflict with Israel came to a truce. The Gaza-based Palestinian terror group allegedly threatening to bomb a passenger airliner unless support for Israel was reversed.
23 мая 2021 года на электронную почту Национального аэропорта Минск с электронного адреса protonmail.com на английском языке поступило письменное сообщение следующего содержания. Мы, солдаты Хамас, требуем, чтобы Израиль прекратил огонь в секторе Газа. Мы требуем, чтобы Европейский Союз отказался от поддержки Израиля в этой войне. Известно, что участники Delphi Economic Forum возвращаются домой рейсом Foxtrot Romeo 4978. В этот самолет заложена бомба. Если вы не выполните наши требования, бомба взорвется 23 мая над Вильнюсом.
Well, after alerting the crew, the flight on its way to Vilnius decided to call Mayday and redirect towards Minsk. Thankfully, no injuries were reported and no explosives were detected upon inspection.
Ему оставалось до аэропорта назначения Вильнюс 70 километров. До аэропорта Минск-2 у него оставалось 175 километров. Вместе с тем, я еще раз повторяю, я считаю, что командиром принято правильное решение. Он полетел на более оборудованный аэродром с более длинной взлетно-посадочной полосой, которая не находится в пределах города, как во многих других аэропортах. Я еще раз говорю, вы представьте, то есть в принципе, что могло бы случиться, если, не дай бог, над Вильнюсом эта информация сработала.
Hamas, for its part, is denying knowledge of this plot. And now joining us with more on the Israeli-Hamas ceasefire and Secretary of State Blinken's visit, fellow with the Jewish People Policy Institute and expert on Israel and the Middle East security, IDF Reserve's Major Dan Pfefferman. Major, thank you so much again for being with us. The United States is again reiterating support for a two-state solution and its mission to help Gaza's civilian population rebuild. But so far, the biggest hurdle that we've seen is keeping Hamas's hands off of the aid, off of money, off of weapons, gold, chemicals, etc., and isolating Hamas as a terror group from the negotiating table. How can this be done, though?
Right. This is the big challenge. I mean, the U.S., the moderate countries in the region, the EU, and of course Israel should all be interested in rehabilitating Gaza while keeping the money and these raw materials, these dual-use materials out of Hamas's hands. It's shown time and again that it will channel as much of this as it can, if not most of it, to rebuilding its terror and military capabilities and continuing these rounds of fighting, which have become increasingly devastating for all sides. So there's obviously no foolproof way of doing this, otherwise it would have been done. There are two main options. I'm honestly not sure which one is the smartest or which one is the most possible. It involves isolating Hamas or pressuring it to disarm and forcing it to turn into a governing entity and not a terror entity. The other way that we're hearing is to bring the Palestinian Authority back into the mix and sidelining Hamas. So there are questions here. Do you work with Hamas trying to tame it and get it to become more of a legitimate actor, and then it needs to disarm and give up its arms and act more as a governing entity? Or does it want to play the part of the terrorist and therefore needs to be sidelined? And that's going to be the big question. Either way, you need regional and international involvement to do this.
Do you see the Palestinian Authority as capable, without major help, of actually governing the Gaza Strip from afar? As we know, in 2007, Fatah was kicked out violently in a coup by Hamas.
No, it doesn't seem to be capable, and it doesn't seem to have the legitimacy or the popularity, not in the entire Palestinian Authority areas, certainly not in the Gaza Strip. So it's not really clear how this is going to happen. But I think the key to doing this is going to be massive international and positive regional involvement to try to rebuild Gaza and either tame or sideline Hamas.
All right, now the Biden administration has taken a pretty clear stance on supporting Israel's right to defend itself from indiscriminate rocket attacks, but Israel is threatening harsh responses to any future attacks from Gaza. At what point does the United States' support maybe waver?
There was a lot of concern, and I'm still hearing it from some people inside of Israel, that Biden would adopt this more far-left, progressive, critical approach on Israel, on anything relating to the Palestinian issue. And in his first Israel test, it should be noted, he came through as pro-Israel, the centrist Democrat that we knew him to be, that he promised to be. He stood up unequivocally for Israel's right to defend itself. Secretary of State Blinken's visit here and the words that he mentioned in the clip that you showed show this. Where could U.S. support waver, and this is theoretical, relating to Gaza? You have to look at if the scale of civilian casualties outpaces and outweighs the perceived threat that Hamas is posing, or the perceived efficacy of Israel's military response. And so far that hasn't happened, because from a military perspective, this campaign and previous campaigns have been managed carefully and smartly on Israel's part. And when we needed that operational breathing space and we asked for it from the Biden administration, they provided it, and it was very important in this operation.
All right, Major Dan Pfefferman, thank you so much for joining us. Now, anti-Israel propaganda, especially in the wake of the latest conflict, spreading into hate all over the world. The World Jewish Congress releasing a report on Monday, including examples of a, quote, far greater volume of online hate speech, often glorifying and praising the Nazi genocide of the Holocaust. And at least half a dozen anti-Semitic attacks have been reported in the United States alone since just last Thursday. President Biden and Vice President Harris condemning the violence, among others, and calling on the nation to stand united against hate of all kinds. Coincidentally, the Jewish People Policy Institute, or JPPI, earlier this month also releasing its own findings on the experience of American Jewry. And joining us now to discuss, senior fellows at the Jewish People Policy Institute, Dr. Shlomo Fisher, IDF Reserve's Major Dan Pfefferman, and Major Pfefferman also being an expert on Israel and Middle East security and the host of the Jewinst podcast. Now, Dan, thank you again for being with us. What finding in this study stuck out to you most, and why?
Sure. This is a major study, and we're just starting to look at it. We're just starting to pour through the findings. Overall, it's the first major study of the American Jewish community since 2013, which was the last Pew study. And of course, you're not going to see a lot of changes in 7 years' time. Pew estimates 7.5 million Jews in America, which is a slight growth from 2013. The big part of the question is who is counted as a Jew and who isn't. Pew takes a slightly expansive approach and includes roughly a quarter of this number who they call Jews not by religion, rather people who do not consider themselves as having any religion, but they're Jewish by ethnicity or family background, or maybe have one Jewish parent. There's some interesting findings, though, that we need to look at when we get into, for example, the age groups. The younger adult age groups, for example, are more likely to be Orthodox, especially Haredi. That's 17% of the younger group. Or they're more likely to be non-affiliated with any of the major denominations of Judaism, 41% in the younger group versus only a third in the overall findings. And most of these non-affiliated Jews are what we call Jews not by religion. Of course, I'll point out a small but sizable minority of these non-affiliated are quite engaged in Jewish life, which shows different trend lines. The biggest, maybe kind of loser, at least numerically, is conservative Judaism, the conservative movement, whose numbers continue to be shrinking, 17% on average of the total, but only 8% of the youngest adult age group, while the Reform movement at 37% overall seems to have taken a slight dip among younger adults. We look at also the racial diversity. 92% of American Jews call themselves white. 8% are a mix of various other kinds of ethnic groups, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and of course, Mizrahi or Sephardi Jews who might identify in different ways. There's still a lot more findings on political affiliations, connections to Israel, and also perceptions of anti-Semitism, which we will be producing reports and analyses in the coming weeks.
All right, now, Dr. Fisher, I want to bring you into this. The United States has been polarized in recent years between politics, racial tensions, et cetera. Do we see a similar polarization among United States Jews? What does the Pew poll tell us about this polarization? Are there red and blue Jews, so to speak, like there are red and blue Americans and red and blue states?
Well, red and blue Jews are, of course, red and blue Americans as well. The studies of Jewish Americans in 2020. And the answer is very definitely yes. We have the general Jewish population is 71% Democrat, blue, liberal. And you have the Orthodox population differs sharply. The Orthodox population, 75% are Republican and are conservative or right wing. So you have right there, you have a very stark political difference, which is relatively new. It's only for the last 20 years or so that you have such a divide. And this, of course, reflects on a whole host of other issues. We would say political moral issues, that the Orthodox population is conservative in American terms, is socially conservative, and whereas the broader American non-Orthodox community is largely liberal and stuff. So we have that polarization really exists.
What has changed? Maybe I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what has changed perhaps in the connection or even the lack thereof between American Jews and Israel?
Well, what you have is that well, first of all, you have tremendous support and attachment to Israel as a country and to the people of Israel and those things. But the differences show up in regard to the government and in regard to policy. That you have among the Orthodox, you have overwhelming support for Netanyahu, and for President Trump in the last presidential administration. And whereas on the other Jews, the majority of the non-Orthodox are liberal and very critical. And to a certain extent, we saw that this week, where leading Democrats in the Senate, John Ossoff, and leading Democrats in the House attempted Jerry Nadler, who represents the most Jewish House district, in the United States, who was very critical of Israeli policies. So you're starting to see that. You're starting to see that polarization. I would add that the Jews of no religion that Dan spoke about previously are almost the polar opposites of the Orthodox in almost everything. I mean, just to take issues that are not that we didn't speak about. If you take the level of marriage with non-Jews,
sure.
So you have Jews of no religion, you have 79%, and among the Orthodox, you have 2%. If you take any host of issues.
So certainly not monolithic is what I'm hearing, which is somewhat to be expected.
Not.
All right, Dr. Shlomo Fisher and Reserves Major Dan Pfefferman, thank you again, both of you, so much for being with us.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Now, she's been steadily gaining a following around the world, but she's already one of Israel's top comedic influencers. And now, in the wake of the recent conflict moving to the online message boards, Liel Eli's accounts, including content shared in English, are blowing up abroad as well. Here's a snapshot of just one of her latest videos regarding this very topic.
Oh my god, so have you heard about this new trend? Oh my god, what trend? What trend? Of hating Israel? Oh my god, I want it. Oh my god, I need it. Oh my god, okay, so you need to post Safe Sheikh Jarrah, I have no idea what it is, and be like, #Free Palestine, #Israel. Oh my god, okay. Oh my god, okay, but shouldn't I be like, okay, peace for both sides? Because, Israeli people are also getting hurt, by terror attacks and rockets and... Oh my god, Casey, you are canceled. Oh my god, you're not part of this trend. Oh my god, no, I want to be part of this trend. That's disgusting, Casey. I want to be a part of this trend.
Liel Eli, Israeli social media influencer, joining us via Zoom today to talk about her viral spoof's impact. Liel, thanks so much for being with us. Now, you are not typically an activist. Usually your content involves light, relatable topics. What was your inspiration for this clip that we just saw, and what was the idea behind it?
I just feel like it actually became trend to hate Israel, because all of the celebrities that I know and love started to post things about Israel, and I feel like they don't even know what the conflict about. It's just trend. I think I decided to do this video when there's one blogger with 20 million followers, and she posted this video of Palestinian on the floor with Tzal soldiers pointing gun at him. And she said, oh my God, Israel is killing civilians. But I sent her the full video that it's actually a terrorist that he was attacking soldier before. So she was like, oh my God, I didn't know. But it just proves to me that they don't even know. Oh, one second. Sorry, my mom got home.
Well, hello. Say hello for us. Well, Liel, all right, so Liel, do you see yourself continuing down a path of activism through your videos? Because like you said, this is becoming a trend that you're seeing more and more. Or do you think that this was a one-time thing?
I feel like it's in my blood. Like I just want justice, you know? So it's not, for me, it's not just posting one video, getting the clout and the likes and the comments. Like, I'm not here for the likes. I'm doing this because I just believe in justice. So I will for sure be more activist when it comes to Israel. Plus, I want to raise my family in here. Like, I'm scared for my country. So for me, if I have the power to post like the truth about Israel, so I'm in it.
Wow. All right, so I want to shift focus for just a moment. For Holocaust Remembrance Day, you joined a few other Israeli influencers in the United Arab Emirates for a very special ceremony. What did that mean to you exactly to be able to do that and to forge relationships with young Emirati peers through that special trip?
That was insane because it was the first Holocaust Day that I mentioned in Arabic country. It was insane. Like, think about it. Muslim people talked about the Holocaust and they light candles for the 6 million Jewish that has been murdered. It was crazy. And it gave me hope because they felt our pain. My mind couldn't, like, it was crazy. It gave me so much hope for peace. You know, I was just like, what are we fighting for? Like, we're feeling the pain of one another. So yeah, it was crazy.
All right, well, I think feeling each other's pain and coming to an understanding is probably the best thing that we could hope for towards peace. Liel, thank you so much, and good luck with your future activism. Thank you again.
Thank you, and sorry for my English.
It was perfect. Nothing to apologize. Oh my God.
No, stop, please stop.
Thank you, Liel. Thank you. All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast with Chana Rifkin.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, pretty clear skies tonight and tomorrow with warm lows this evening in the 60s in Fahrenheit or the teens in Celsius. Then Wednesday, tomorrow, temperature highs ranging in the 80s and 90s with a roasting 103 in Eilat and the upper 30s in Celsius.
And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. This is definitely a video that's been going viral in Israel. What you're seeing here is in the Ramat Gan Safari. It's a zoo just east of Tel Aviv. And here we have a herd of elephants crowding around a calf while the air raid sirens sound. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.24 shekels to the American dollar and 2.69 shekels to the Canadian dollar. And finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.